I've already spoken ad nauseum about rent stabilization and rent control laws in apartments in New York City. Have you heard of something very different but also a little bit similar? It's called the rent succession rights. It basically allows an apartment to stay in a family for decades, if not generations. Let's talk a little bit more about this, and then you can decide where you stand on whether or not it's actually a useful tool or not for the housing economy here. Now, to give you an idea of how the New York City rent succession rights actually work, let's say you're living in an apartment rent controlled or rent stabilized with a family member. As long as you've lived with them for a minimum of 2 years, you're legally entitled to take over their lease duration, lease terms, lease amount, everything in that lease itself once they vacate the premises, whether they decide to move out of the location or, God forbid, they pass away. And I want to make something extra clear. There is no income limitations to this, right? So let's say, for example, you're extremely well off and you decide to live with a family member that's living in a rent stabilized or rent controlled apartment, and there's a lease in place where, they decide to say, hey, you know what, I'm moving out. If you've lived with them for a couple of years, you are legally entitled to tell the landlord, hey, I'm taking over this lease from my family member.